Welcome to From the Mind of Christine McConnell. So today's episode is going to be so exciting and fun. I've personally been looking forward to it for, I want to say maybe like 4 or 5 months. I had a contest on Patreon in November where I offered like a giveaway to several winners of like a makeup kit. And it kind of triggered this idea. I've been collecting antique compacts and perfume bottles and jars forever. I find them on eBay and like estate sales, things like that. And it kind of gave me this idea to transfer some of my very favorite modern day cosmetics into those containers. Because up until this point, I've always just had them sort of sitting around the house as like decoration. And the idea of making them actually functional and usable seems really fun and amazing. So that's what today's episode is going to be. And I'm going to be covering a ton of different things. So I hope you're excited. I'm personally really jazzed about this one. And I think we are ready to begin. Okay, so I have changed into comfortable clothes because I'm just kind of finding that like actually crafting in fancy clothes is pretty much the equivalent of trying to dance in a straitjacket, meaning it's just not fun. So I think I'll be all like, I'll look nice for like the intros and the outros, and then I'm just going to be comfortable through the rest. So the first thing I want to tackle of all of these things that we're going to be getting into is eyeshadow. So I don't know about you and eyeshadows, but I always buy palettes and then end up only using a couple of the colors, just because when I look at like a spectrum of colors, I can easily pick out like, I'm going to use that, I'm going to use that, and I'm never going to touch these or that or whatever. And I think most people are probably like that to some degree. So the cool thing about this is I'm going to be able to pull out all of the favorite shades that I have from several different palettes, put them all in one place, and then I think I might even make an extra one of my maybe one day colors that sometimes, when you look at colors, you're like, maybe I'll use that one day. So I think I might make a whole collection of those, which is going to be kind of fun because if I do have one of those days pop up, I will easily be able to grab that palette and use it. So I think I'm ready to start on this. I'm going to save a lot of the detailed information for the cosmetics that I'm featuring in this episode because I'm going to be doing a makeup video here pretty soon, and that will be when I sort of delve into the products that I like and use. But for the eyeshadow palettes, it's really just a combination of Melt eyeshadows and a few MAC ones as well. When I decided I was going to do this episode, the biggest hurdle that was sort of present in my mind was where was I going to put the eyeshadows? Because traditional, makeup compacts from the past tend to be pretty small. And then I stumbled upon antique cigarette cases, which are so incredibly ideal for this. A couple of the reasons I chose to go with Melt and MAC eyeshadows is because not only are they amazing products, but both companies use magnets to keep their eyeshadows in their trays. So removing and transferring is incredibly simple with those brands. I'm using Project Board to essentially wrangle in these eyeshadows into the places that I want them to stay. If I were to do this again in the future, I think I'd want to experiment with wood for this part of the project. I just think it would last longer and you kind of have a few more options as far as finishes. Once they were all cut out into the shapes that I needed, I took them outside and spray painted them gold, then brought them back in. Once they had totally dried, I put a really light coat of Mod Podge over them before applying a gold leaf. Nearly all of these cigarette cases come with sort of like a little handle that holds down the cigarettes, and I sadly had to cut that away using a metal nibbler. I generally really don't like damaging antiques, but I don't know. This wasn't gonna work if I didn't do that, and I mean, it was for cigarettes, so is that okay? I don't know. I decided I wanted to create my own special emblem for this collection of antique cases. So, using a technique that I featured in the Valentine's Day episode using Sculpey, I sculpted a couple owls and a little star, and I'll be casting these multiple times and then adhering them to those antique cases. The products I used for this process are Sculpey clay to create that initial shape. Then I'm using an alginate to create that mold. And then once that's done, I'm going to use Hydrostone to create those castings. I used a hot glue gun to set in the frame and the eyeshadows, and the wonderful thing about this is should you ever want to release either, all you have to do is hit the back of the case with a hairdryer and it should pop right out. So now that the eyeshadows are all done, I'm going to begin transferring my favorite foundations and concealer over to these antique Christian Dior perfume bottles. I found one of these at an antique store probably just about 4 months ago, and I loved it so much and it kind of inspired this idea. And then I started scouring the internet looking for them, and they are horrifically expensive and hard to come by. But I want to say it took me about like 2, almost 3 months to find enough of them to do what I wanted at a price that I was willing to accept. So now that I've done that, I'm going to clean them out really well and begin this process. I'm using a 2-part Gorilla Glue to adhere those emblems that I made to these bottles. This stuff is so intense and strong that it's really durable, but should anyone ever come along and want to take off these emblems, I believe a good amount of acetone should do the job. I think either way it's going to be a bit of a process, but it is technically reversible. I had what I thought was a genius idea to attach a little doe foot to the stopper of the smallest perfume bottle because that was the one I was going to put my concealer in, and it seemed like a great idea to have something to sort of apply that with. But I discovered that not only had I overfilled my bottle, but without something to sort of scrape off the sides, you just kind of end up making a mess. Now I'm going to be transferring cream blushes and highlighters into these beautiful little vintage compacts. I've been collecting these for years. I always nab them up when I see them at an estate sale. And they're so beautiful. The only thing I'm going to warn you about is because these are so old, if you open one up and the blush inside is perfectly intact and hasn't really been used, I wouldn't use those. I would just sort of, for historical reasons, you don't want to ruin antiques. But if the blush has been used almost all the way down, so that's what I did. I looked through my whole collection, found ones that I felt like you weren't hurting anybody by just cleaning them out and using them for yourself. So the first thing I want to do is completely sterilize them. Because you're going to be using cosmetics that you're actually going to be putting on your face, you don't want to be putting them in containers that may be contaminated. So I think that's my first step with this. Once my containers were all clean and sparkly, I transferred over my very favorite cream blush into the prettiest, most elaborate container. The only problem was I kind of picked the biggest one, so I ended up having to transfer 2 full palettes of the blush over to really top it off. This process can be a little bit messy, and you do have to do some cleanup with a Q-tip and even pop a few air bubbles. But other than that, when you're done, it just looks so pretty, and it kind of just looks like the product came in this container originally. So this is a step I've really been looking forward to. They used to make these little solid perfume compacts that you could wear either as like a brooch or a necklace or attached to a bracelet. And I think they're so cute. And it's a nice way to wear perfume that isn't overpowering just because it's very subtle because it's a solid. So what I'm going to be doing is using one of my very favorite fragrances. This is Dita Von Teese's signature fragrance. I know her personally and I've been in her presence and she just smells incredible. So that was kind of one of the reasons I wanted to use this fragrance. And I'm going to be using jojoba oil and natural beeswax as sort of the component that's going to blend everything together. So let's begin, and I'm going to start this off by heating up a double boiler. While that heats up, I'm going to clean out and sanitize these brooches. This is actually a really fun, simple project to do. I'm using a shot glass to transfer some of the perfume into and some saran wrap so I don't waste any with overspray. Then you just need a few shavings of honeybees wax and jojoba oil. You're probably going to want to add a little more jojoba oil than I featured right here, just because once your formula is in the compact, you want it to have enough moisture that you can easily rub it and apply it to your pulse points, and that's how you wear it as perfume. I recently picked up this beautiful perfume decanter, and this seemed like the ideal moment to transfer an incredible scent into it. While we're on the topic of perfume, I'm going to use an antique perfume atomizer to transfer over a setting spray into. The first thing I need to do though is replace the bulb. You can find these bulb replacements easily on Amazon, but I do love the tassel that was on the original atomizer, so I am going to swap that over. So I found this cool, I think it's pronounced Pizzanis. It's an old tin, I think it's from about 1910. It's intended for powder. And I think I want to clean it up and transfer over a modern day powder into it. And then as soon as I'm done with that, I even want to make one of those fun kind of Marie Antoinette looking powder puffs on a stick. So I don't know, it just seemed like a cute idea. And I'm going to start by using some Brasso on this just to see if I can restore the finish a little bit. To create the wand for my powder puff applicator, I'm just using an old paintbrush that I should have rinsed when I last used it, and I didn't, so technically I ruined it for that purpose. But now it's going to have a new life as a really pretty looking piece on my vanity. It may seem like I'm going overkill here by making a cute little pillow to go on the back of this, but it's just an extra step that makes it a little bit nicer, and the entire project from start to finish took about 2 hours. So for me, that seems kind of worth it to end up with something really cute and pretty at the end. An amazing tip I once got from Dita Von Teese was to transfer modern day lipsticks into antique containers. The reason this is such a clever idea is because the lipstick holders from the past were so incredibly beautiful and ornate, and the transferring process is actually fairly simple. I'm going to go a few steps further with this idea by sort of painting on my own design and sort of personalizing them, which I think should be really fun. It's going to be time consuming, so I'm just mentally preparing myself for that. I found these really pretty vintage Helena Rubinstein lipsticks on eBay. They're from, I believe, the early 1970s and had never been used. I do feel a little bit bad disposing of this perfectly intact stick, but it had kind of expired, and I think the plan that I have for the tube overall will be worth the sacrifice. I made a total of 4 of these tubes, 3 for the winners of that giveaway in November and 1 for myself. When I had gotten it to this stage, I hand painted the initial of each girl into the oval in the center. The transferring process of a new lipstick has to be done extremely quickly, and your bare finger can never actually touch the lipstick or it'll ruin the finish. Ideally, you want the product to be as frozen and cold as you possibly can get it, and keep as much of a barrier between the heat of your skin and the tube as possible. The last thing I'm going to show you is how to refill an antique cold cream jar. This entire episode is kind of revolved around how to refill cosmetics cases to apply makeup, and so it seemed fitting to have the last thing be what you use to finally take all of that makeup off. And everything is finally together. I've mentioned that this process was kind of like 4 or 5 months in the making, and I had kind of like an idea in my head of what it was going to look like. And as you're working on each individual thing, you sort of hope that it all sort of comes together. And looking at it now, I would say that it vastly exceeded my expectations. So, oh my gosh, I'm so thrilled. And my next step is to actually make the makeup video where I'm going to be applying or utilizing all of these things. And I'm super jazzed to even just have this stuff to use on myself on a daily basis. The gift kits that I've put together are going to be going out soon. I'm not really sure when you're supposed to be going to the post office, but I'll figure that out. And I hope in the meantime you guys are taking care of yourselves. I am just going to keep making fun videos. I will just start MacGyvering projects out of stuff that I have around the house. And again, take care of yourselves, and I will see you very soon. Lastly, here's a sneak peek at those makeup kits for November's giveaway. I'll be posting a list of all of these products very soon.